What's kicking, everybody? We are back for another episode of Pickin' Fights. I'm Keith, joined as always by my friend Tom. Tom, how are you today, bro?
Move, check. Life in shambles, also check. But we're here to talk about some UFC, so let's do it. Starting off, how was the card last night? I trust that you stayed up all throughout the night to watch that incredibly stacked card. So tell me about it, Keith. What'd you think?
Yo, call me a casual. Call me what you want. I didn't watch it last night. I saw the highlights after the fact. I know, for the most part, my picks were pretty solid. Derek Lewis did not come through. 1-4 over his last five, gets choked out by Sergey Spivak with the arm
Right.
triangle last night. Disappointing. And then I know the other one I went down with was Kinoshita, lost to Adam Fujit. So,
Hmm.
um, you know, all in all, decent night. Jun Young Park, that was my prelim lock.
Yep, I
Beat
had
me
that
last night,
same.
the Iron
Yeah,
Turtle.
couldn't
That was
uh couldn't couldn't join with you last week. Like I said, had to move, had a lot of stuff going on. Apologies to you, and maybe I don't owe any apologies to the fans. Maybe they enjoyed it better. Maybe they did.
no, no,
Not
no,
seeing my ugly
no.
mug. But
I
that
had
being
some
said,
technical difficulties without you. Don't worry.
yeah, no worries, man. Hey, I'm glad you got the camera figured out. But
Yeah.
listen, the I think they call Jung Young Park the Iron Turtle, something like that, and went out there, showcased his submission skills against Adam Tuluilin, the way you like to say it. So good win for him. I was looking at him as a potential lock too. You also had Superboy go out there, go to a decision because of a very weird headbutt where they took a point away. Dana gave him the win bonus anyway. I'm sure that wasn't the way that they wanted that fight to go. Superboy, it was like his time to show off and really make his stamp in front of at least a card that was supposed to be in front of the Korean fans, but at least timed for them. So that was the disappointment. And then you have the Derek Lewis going out there and getting submitted by Sergey Spivak. I think just over 4 minutes in the first round. So much for Slim Derek Lewis coming out there and taking it on. At this point, I don't think you can put Derek Lewis in any more main events because the caliber of competition for a main event, he's just not showing that he's there, or at the very least put him in a striking competition, but even those he's starting to fall too. So I
Yeah.
don't know. I mean, if he's not willing to hang it up, which I don't think he necessarily has to, because he still has that draw and that name value, but I think you got to put him somewhere on maybe the beginning of the main card or somewhere on the middle against someone who's a little bit of a lesser name just to get that knockout. But then who's going to sign up for that?
It's crazy. It's such a fall from grace because you had him fight for the interim title in Houston against Cyril Gahn. And then since then, it's pretty much just been like a very steep and fast decline. The loss to Tai Tuivasa really sticks out. And it does beg the question, though, is Sergey Spivak legit? Because he does have legitimate grappling.
Yeah.
And then to be able to, hang in there and I mean, Derek Lewis, it's a weird thing because is Derek Lewis that guy? Could Derek Lewis have even knocked out Spivak last night?
Mhm.
And then Spivak goes in there and chokes out Derek Lewis, who doesn't really have much of a ground game to begin with. So there's a lot of questions to be answered from last night. But Spivak climbing up. But
And he's younger too, right?
yeah,
He's younger, so he's improving more rapidly. It's hard to see, I mean, listen, for a long time, Derek Lewis was a guy that was pretty difficult to get to the ground, especially
yeah,
because of those uppercuts. You think about the Curtis Blade fight, you know,
right.
Spivak had no issues. Now, is that more of a condemnation on Derek Lewis or, a feather in the cap of Sergey Spivak? That remains to be seen. But Sergey Spivak's on a little bit of a tear here. He's looked better and better. Hasn't been the best competition. Derek Lewis is by far his best win, I think. And even that's going to come with a little bit of an asterisk. But that being said, I want to see Sergey Spivak up against, maybe someone in the top 10, top 5-ish, see how he really competes in there. And, with John Jones coming back, Cyril Gahn being there, and Francis no longer, I guess clogging up the title for better or for worse.
No, he's
Um,
good.
I yeah,
Yeah.
I think the heavyweight division is primed, to run to greatness. And the funny thing is we always talk about dominant champions, dominant champions, dominant champions, but they do kind of lend themselves to a little bit of a stagnant division, right? You think about featherweight and you think that, as dominant as Volk has been, featherweight's a little bit less than exciting because he's that stalwart as a champion. Now he's putting on fantastically entertaining fights, and maybe he's not the best example. But I think about Demetrius Johnson. As soon as he leaves, boom, that becomes one of the best weight classes in the UFC at 125 pounds. Same thing is going to repeat itself at heavyweight now. And then, you also look at light heavyweight, even though they maybe don't have always the best fights. As soon as John Jones gets out of there, now you have, Old Man Glover, and you have Yuri, and now you have Jamal Hill, and, that becomes exciting again. So, dominant champion's fantastic, but not necessarily good for the excitement of the sport overall. So excited for the future of the heavyweight division.
Oh, big time. One matchup that I'm super excited for, heavyweight matchup that's coming up. I don't know if they've announced a date or if it's coming at the end of the year, but that is Tom Aspinall versus Sergey Pavlovich.
Mm-hmm.
I'm super pumped for that fight.
Massive
Both
fight.
those guys can brawl. You have super strong on his feet, Sergey Pavlovich, and then you've got a jack of all trades and Tom Aspinall. Aspinall
super technical.
Yeah. And Sergey Pavlovich just beating the shit out of people. So
it's going to be, I mean, listen, I don't know how strong of a comparison this is, but just at least preliminary skills wise, it almost is like a Francis Ngannou versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik, where you have the technical kickboxer who's got really good fight IQ, and then the other guy who's just coming at him winging punches. Not to discredit any fight IQ that Sergey Pavlovich may have, but let's not beat around the bush. His strength is going to be in his punches, and it's going to be in coming forward and laying that pressure on you. And you have to decide really quickly, what do you do? How are you going to get out of the way? And even if he lands punches on you and it lands off your guard, that's going to hurt too. So that is definitely feeds into it. I was listening to Paul Felder on Joe Rogan talk about, I think when he was fighting Edson Barboza, and then he also tied it into, I want to say, Jamal Hill fighting Glover Teixeira, where even just throwing that left high kick and getting your guard up and it hitting off your forearm, that hurts, dude. And that adds up over time.
Yeah, look at the Wonder Boy Kevin Holland fight. Wonder Boy basically broke Kevin Holland's hand with that.
And Kevin Holland had no choice but to keep getting walloped on the broken hand to protect his consciousness.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of, did we ever touch on this? I think it might have been the week that you were out. Kevin Holland allegedly jumping Ugly Man Joe.
Yeah, I heard about that, but I haven't heard anything else. And we like Ugly Man Joe, friend of the program, at least friend of mine on Twitter. I like to think, not obscure. I don't know, and I haven't heard any details on that. Admittedly, with the move and everything going on, haven't looked into it too deeply, but I haven't heard anything come out on that. And you would think that an accusation like that against someone like Kevin Holland, who's usually doing the saving and not doing the jumping, you would think you would hear more on that. So maybe it was just a dust up, and maybe it was like one of those things that, who was it? Jake. Oh my God, I'm blanking on the last name. Remember when he beat up what's his name in the in practice? Like he jumped on him, and then the guy was going to sue him. It was the guy who beat CM Punk. He's known to be like really bad. Mike Jackson. It was Mike Jackson versus Jake Shields. Right. And they saw each other at the gym. They said it was on site. I think Mike Jackson did something. Jake Shields took him down and beat the shit out of him. And then Mike Jackson is going to, try and file a charge against Jake Shields. And Jake Shields is like, dude, like, you wanted to fight me. I didn't, sucker punch you like what happened with Colby and George Masvidal. This was in a gym. You're a trained UFC fighter. You should be able to defend this. It's not like a gross mismatch. And Jake Shields is retired. He's like, dude, at the end of the day, you're the active fighter here, and I beat your ass. If you're going to call the cops on me, you have to really look internally about you and your career choice. So really interesting. How did we get on that?
Talking about Ugly Man Joe and Kevin Holland.
Oh, yeah. So
I mean,
I don't know if it's
from what I saw from Joe Holmes, it sounds like Kevin Holland's crew like found him and beat him up. But I don't know what the prior beef was or like what the reason behind that would be. It's just interesting to see like accusations lobbed out there like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Without really, I don't know what the reasoning would be or like if there's any credibility behind it whatsoever. And Kevin Holland's response was like, "I'll pay you to spar me," basically like. So that it would be interesting if this was like the Kevin Holland villain arc. Like he's been called like Superman and like a crime fighter for so long. So it'd be interesting to see if this is like his turn, heel.
Hey, listen, even if he turns heel, he's going to be one of those lovable heels. He's the heel that everyone likes, Randy Orton, he was always a heel, but everybody loved Randy Orton. At least in my limited time, I watched WWE. He was a heel, man. He was going against John Cena, who was the baby face, but there was something about Randy Orton. You're like, oh, the
Yeah,
Viper's coming.
yeah,
So
yeah. No,
I see
definitely.
that.
So let's dive into this card. I'm super pumped for this card.
Before we
Um,
do that,
yeah, I was gonna say
make sure.
let's remind all the kind people at home. Please like, comment, and subscribe. If you're watching this right now, jump in the chat. Leave us some questions. We'd love to answer them. And just chat with you in here. That makes our day a
Right.
lot more fun. And what you can listen to us on Spotify as well. If you can't watch a whole YouTube video and whatever, and you just want to listen to us on Spotify. And follow us on our social media pages as well. That's at _picking winners on Instagram and Twitter. And then our personal Twitter handles are right below our names. Mine is at Pickin' Keith, and Tom is at Pickin' Fights Tom. We've got a lot of stuff coming out with Pickin' Winners, pickinwinners.org.
Hmm.
Tyler's back doing his lacrosse stuff, so that's really exciting. I love tailing Tyler's lacrosse picks. I'm super pumped for lacrosse season.
Yeah,
Um,
no, it's interesting. Like, I don't know if anyone's ever listened to, when Joe Rogan would talk about early 2000s UFC, where he would come in and he would know the guys because he was interested, but the Vegas lines hadn't quite caught up yet. So he'd be like, oh my God, like Anderson Silva would be fighting, it'd be even. He'd be like, bet the house on the Brazilian.
yeah,
So, I feel like Tyler and the information he gives on, the PLL is kind of like somewhat in that same vein of like, hey, listen, this is a new emerging sport. Maybe Vegas doesn't have all the eyes or the data on it yet. And, somebody who's played the sport at a high level and knows the sport and loves it, who can comment on it and give those tips to people who are novices who don't know really anything about lacrosse. I just know it's basically if you took soccer and hockey, put it together, you get lacrosse, which sounds fun. I've been able to sit and watch that much longer
that
than
was
I've been able to
great.
sit and watch soccer. So,
Yeah,
especially if I think they have fights in there too, like hell yeah,
yeah, they
right?
hit each other pretty hard.
Hell yeah. Let's go.
Yeah,
So,
it's a
yeah, I think
great
it's like
pick.
shades of an early Joe Rogan UFC insight from
That's a great
Tyler.
take.
Make sure everybody check that out.
Yeah, it's a great take, and then he'll be on our YouTube as well. So, him and Mikey Truth. So definitely make
Hype.
sure you're checking their stuff out for lacrosse. I'm super pumped for that, as well as we always collaborate with menofwater.com.
Hmm.
Post up blogs there on Sundays after this, and just give a little bit more insight, a little bit more in-depth analysis as to
Right.
what's going on, and highlight some of the more fun aspects of these cards. So, with all that being said, let's start as we always do with our prelim notables, prelim locks. So,
All right.
I'll kick it off with one that I'm really looking forward to, and that is Tyson Pedro. Tyson Pedro is fighting Modestus Bukauskas, and I haven't really heard from Modestus in a while. But look, this is a card. In case you don't know, it's taking place in Perth, Australia, and just like the UFC has been doing with these past 3, 4 cards. They're putting them in certain locations, or they're at least in last week's case, they're slotting it for a time where it's easy for fans of Asia to watch. We had the Brazilian card with all the Brazilian fighters, and now we're in Australia, and the card is stacked with Australian fighters and fighters from that region.
Hmm.
Tyson Pedro hails from Australia, um, so it's easy to put him on this card. A little disappointed that Tai Tuivasa was knocked out by Sergey Pavlovich, like we were talking about not too long ago, because he should have been on this card as well. I think that would have
Right.
been fun for the fans. But anyways, Tyson Pedro, I believe, is Tai Tuivasa's brother-in-law, but
Yes, that's right. I think they have a podcast together too out of,
in a beer
you
company.
know, they do have a beer company. That makes sense, right? And they
Yeah,
probably are sponsored by the Chewy brand that they came up with.
yeah, probably.
Good
So
for them. Entrepreneurs.
yeah, you got to capitalize.
Gotta
So
capitalize.
minus 250 for Tyson Pedro. Big line, but I like his power. He got it done last time pretty handedly against Harry Hunsucker. For those of you who may remember, we were kind of like trashing Harry Hunsucker on here, and caught a little bit of flack in the comments for it after, but he got it done handedly. A nice body kick, to ground and pound TKO. It was a good victory for Tyson Pedro. I expect him, like, this is a guy that he has a very high ceiling,
Hmm.
especially for a light heavyweight,
Hmm.
and he just really hasn't spent the octagon time in there to capitalize on it just yet. So I'm expecting a good victory for Tyson Pedro this week. Home crowd, strong guy, coming off 2 wins. I expect him to make it a 3-win streak, and I'm going to parlay him with my next prelim notable pick. But in the meantime, I'll let you attack one of yours, Tom.
All right. Well, with that being said, I am getting it all lined up here. And my next prelim lock, prelim pick, prelim notable, whatever we're going to decide to call it, is going to be Luma Luca Bonmi. And maybe I should have a little bit more confidence knowing how to pronounce her last name if I'm going to pick her here. But I know she's taking on Elise Reed. And Elise Reed, looking at her 5-on-in, obviously only 6-2, Loma 7-3. Loma has a ton of kickboxing experience fighting out of Phuket, Thailand. Minus 275 favorite here. I like it. You're looking at, Elise Reed, who had, that unanimous decision win over Melissa Martinez 7-0 3 months ago. Not a bad look, especially, her coming out of Princeton, New Jersey, very close to where I'm at nowadays. But the loss to Sam on the ground via TKO. She had the split decision to Corey McKenna, which hasn't really aged too well. She had the loss on the ground to Sajara Eubanks, again, not aging all the best, coming off of Cage Fury. Got her into the UFC, and 115 pounds. I think the UFC is a little bit, they have a lot of talent right at the top of the division, but once you get out of those top 5, top 10 fighters, it really seems to fall off. And Luma is somebody that is a little bit younger. She has a depth of knowledge in terms of striking and how to strike and manage distance. And because of that, I'm going to end up taking her here. I think she's going to have enough to get it done over Elise Reed. I think Elise Reed, when it comes to the ground game, leaves a little bit to be desired, especially when it comes to ground and pound. I think Luma's going to look to stand and kickbox with her. And I think Luma's going to have the advantage there when it comes to that Thai style of striking. So I'm going to take Luca Bame to Luke Boonmi, something to that effect. I'm going to take her to get the W. Minus 275, so she's a moderate favorite. I don't know if you necessarily have to increase that, but Elise Reed, looking at her past 5, she can get finished on the ground, elbows from mount. I don't think Luma is going to do too much of that and threaten that ground style too much. So I would think maybe by a decision, like a unanimous decision for Luma to get this one done here. I don't know if she's going to get the knockout. The people on Tapology, 89% taking Luke Boonmi, 91 of those people taking her by decision. So I'm going to go with them. And I think, maybe even not necessarily an inside the distance, but just taking that, plus the rounds or whatever it is, just show yourself up, depending on what those lines end up looking like. It is still a little early in the week. So with that being said, turn it back over to you, Keith. What is your next prelim lock?
Right. Next one I got is Jamie Mullarkey over Francisco Prieto. I feel good about this one.
I don't saying his name correctly. It's Jamie Mullarkey.
Yeah, Jamie Mullarkey. I'm going to say it the American way.
Mullarkey.
Just because I can't do the Aussie accent that well.
I love when John Anik does it, because he'll just be like, all right, and now fighting Jamie Mullarkey.
Yeah, no, I love – who doesn't love John Anik?
Who doesn't love John Anik?
Yeah, so I've got Jamie Mullarkey over Francisco Prieto this week. And Francisco Prieto is a guy that's making his UFC debut. He fought in some weird promotions. What is that one called? It's like Samurai Fight Club or something.
That is exact Samurai Fight House.
Yeah, never heard of it. And as always, it's tough to make
pretty regularly too.
Yeah, he was.
Look at the level of competition we got here: 0-0, 8-2, 21-15, 6-0. All right, wow. So he's coming off a six-week break.
Yeah. Oh wow! I didn't even realize that. The turnaround's pretty quick. It's always tough to make your debut as a UFC fighter, especially against a guy like Jamie Mullarkey, he's fought some heavy hitters. He's fought Brad Riddell, Jalen Turner. He's lost those 2 guys, but he shared some pretty significant octagon time with some really good fighters. Coming off a win against Michael Johnson, and wins against Kama Worthy. I like Jamie Mullarkey. He's a tough guy. He's really scrappy. He's willing to, take 1 to give 2. And I think, I just the level of competition has been there for him, and for Francisco Prieto, not so much. Jamie Mullarkey has a nice chin on him. So, I have faith in Jamie Mullarkey. I'm going to parlay him with Tyson Pedro this week. I like those 2 prelim picks. And like I said before, the deck is really stacked in favor of the Australian fighters, especially, really outside of like the main event. So, I'm definitely rolling with Jamie Malarkey here. I feel like they wouldn't have picked Francisco Prado out of everybody on the UFC roster.
Mhm.
They signed this guy out of Samurai Fight House to fight Jamie Malarkey.
The legendary and the notorious Samurai Fight House.
Yeah, this is definitely poised to get Jamie Malarkey a win. He's a very
Mhm.
marketable guy. He's very tough. So
I agree with
um,
you. I agree
yeah,
with you.
so
And if I could just add one
yeah,
point here, the only person who's been able to recently knock out Jamie Malarkey is Jalen Turner, who has an incredible reach. Whereas Jamie Malarkey, he's going to be 6 foot going up against 5'10", so he's going to be a little bit of the bigger guy. Maybe not quite as stocky, but he's going to have the reach. He's going to have the overall, size advantage, and he's going to have the experience advantage. Yeah, at the 20-year-old Francisco Prado, probably biting off just a little bit more than he can chew to get his feet wet in the UFC. Personally, though, I think um, this is the kind of UFC entrance that is really, really hard to turn down because, of course, you're going to want to fight Jimmy Malarkey on the Perth card. Also being from Argentina, you're going to be the away fighter, so you're going to be against the whole crowd. But this is the kind of fight that I feel like the Yuri Prohashkas of the world turn down so that when they get to the UFC, they really light it on fire.
yeah,
And, coming off of a smaller promotion, and no disrespect to Animal Fight House. Was that what it was? Animal Fight
Samurai
House?
Fight House.
Samurai Fight House. No disrespect at all, but obviously the level of competition that you're facing there is not going to be you can't quantify that. I can't compare that to the UFC, should I say?
Yeah,
So I think it's going to be a rude awakening, unfortunately, for the very young, very green, and a little bit smaller Francisco Prado. That's a good. That's
yeah.
a good bet.
Well said. Well said. All right. So I'm gonna parlay Tyson Pedro and Jamie Malarkey today. What else do you got? You got any more prelim notables for us?
Yeah, I got one more, and it's going back to the well on what we were talking about in terms of fighting for the home guy. I'm gonna go with Jack Jenkins over Don Shainis, shameless Shainis. Here's the reason why. Shainis, we're looking. His first UFC appearance, he got choked out by Sadiq Youssef, and at the end of the day, we see a lot of people in their UFC debuts not go the way they want it to. But when we look back at the people and the level he's fought, a 9-7 TKO over Cage in Cage Titans. He's got the KO TKO of 16-8 Cody Fister. Pretty funny last name for a multitude of reasons. And then, Jay Ellis, the notorious Jay Ellis, 16 and 104. I forget who we were talking about fairly recently that fought Jay Ellis twice, once as an amateur and once as a professional. And, got obviously 2 wins. It's not too many people. Only 16 men, 120 have tried. Only 16 have not won against Jay Ellis. So, take that for what you will. At the end of the day, looking at this, 31-year-old Shainis, I don't think he's improving too much. And I also looked up Citadel Martial Arts, not a ton of top level caliber fighters coming out of there, at least as far as Tapology has. I think the most recent guy had fought in like 2019. So definitely a little bit unknown. And, you just, go playing to the home crowd. Australian guy, Jack Jenkins, a guy coming off the Contender Series win. So we know he's got that level of competition. And again, losing to Sadiq Youssef by submission in a guillotine choke isn't the worst thing, just looking at it from like a 30,000 foot view. But I think Jack Jenkins on the Australian card with every bit, you know, of his being trying to go out there and prove wrong against a level of competition that, you know, he should win this one, so to speak. He should be able to get this one done. He's pretty well versed, like he's got the wins over, via leg kicks, punches and knees, chokes. I think he's just a pretty well-rounded fighter. He's also going to be a little bit bigger in here, 145 pounds. He's a little bit younger, has a little bit better of an experience of competition, a little bit of better record here. There's a lot of things that are leaning me towards Jenkins, especially the intelligent genius community of Tapology, picking him by 92%, 67% by TKO. I'm going to have to ride with them as well with Jack Jenkins here. So just to summarize that for all of the fine folks at home, all 3 of you guys, we got Luma Luka Bume over Elise Reed. We got Jack Jenkins over Don Shainis. We got Jamie Malarkey over Francisco Prado. I like that one a lot. We got Tyson Pedro over Modestas Bukauskas. And guess what, Keith? This is another example where while we're doing the show, the card updates, and it's actually in a different order than it was at first. Tyson Pedro, where he should be as the prelim main event. Actually interesting that he didn't find his way onto the main card, especially with his background of having a really high ceiling, having a couple injuries, having a couple lackluster performances. and then coming back and looking fantastic and like his old self. So I guess maybe get people hyped and maybe get them to buy the card. And Islam Makhachev is really not happy with the promotion of UFC 284.
Yeah, it's been pretty lackluster so far. I'm a little disappointed with it. I feel like a fight like this should have the entire world getting excited for it.
Yeah, why are we
And
not getting press conferences, dude? Come on.
you would think that there would be at least a U.S. press conference, maybe something over in Russia,
I
and
would
then
say
you
at least a Perth press
Australia.
conference, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then why don't you do one? I guess maybe Russia and Dagestan. It's not a great time right now for
Yeah.
from social point of view. But that being said, I mean, they have done some things. Like I think they were on Ariel Helwani. You have DC who literally finds everything Islam says. Like he thinks
Hilarious.
Islam Chappelle. Like
Yeah.
serious. Like he's every time he says something, he's just
Yeah. He
like
does have
laughing
some
so
funny
hard.
lines.
I know
Does
he
have
goes.
some funny lines,
He,
but DC is the
he said
most
he goes
out there.
Australia don't have wrestling, and then like he just said that simple thing, and he wasn't even trying to be funny, and then he goes, oh well, Volk's a wrestling champion, and just like couldn't get it out because he was laughing so hard. It's like, hey, dude, stop forcing it. Like, jeez,
EC is a classic dick rider.
he's just a clown in a lot of different ways. And I want to like DC. I want to like him. And I do like him on commentary, but it's
Yeah.
like if there's visual of DC, he becomes like a clown. And it's just like, all right, you're a big person now. I'm sure you're fun to be around, but like it's hard to watch when you're trying to like there's plenty of blunders he's made when trying to interview people and like being traditionally biased. And obviously, he loves Islam. He's going to be commentating the fight, he's going to be commentating the John Jones fight. Like, do we really think that that's the right thing?
I don't want to see either of those because it's just going to be all of his commentary is going to be in favor of Islam for this fight, and then it's all going to be in favor of Cyril Gane, which I'm okay with. But that'll be the first time that he talks highly about Cyril Gane because when he fought Derek Lewis and he fought Francis Ngannou the whole time, all Derek Lewis had to say was good things about those two guys.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be an interesting moral dilemma for Derek Lewis when John Jones and Cyril Gane face off, because he's not going to know, do I praise John Jones or do I praise Cyril Gane, because that he wants to shit on both of those guys. But this time around, I'm just not looking forward to it. I feel like he shouldn't be allowed to commentate cards where there's these guys that he trains with still at AKA.
Bias, yeah.
Yeah, it's 100% bias. So then you rely on, I don't know who the third man at the table is, but John Anik is certainly a Volk supporter. He's a little bit more unbiased, but then it causes one of those three guys at the table to lean in favor of the guy that DC is not with, and it just naturally happens where now there's someone that has to defend whoever DC is just shitting on for no reason. You can even and DC doesn't even like Volk, because you can go back to the Brian Ortega fight, and I've rewatched that one numerous times, and the commentary booth is all like, wow, what a shot from Volk. And then Brian Ortega will just slip a small slight jab in there, and DC's like, well, that was a big shot for Brian. It's like, shut the fuck up, DC. Come on, man. I know you're a great fighter. There's no denying that. But and great commentator.
Just because you're a great fighter doesn't mean you're absolved from any potential bias.
Yeah, definitely. Well,
so
with all that being said, let's dive into this main card. All right, kicking it off, we have Jack Della Maddalena versus Randy Brown, and it's easy. Jack Della Maddalena. This guy is a highly touted prospect right now. All three of his UFC fights, he's ended with TKOs in the first round. He's incredible. His hands just work so proficiently. He's such a great boxer, great chin, but he's immensely powerful. Minus 310 going into this fight for a great reason. And while Randy Brown has fought really good competition, I just think another setup, very, very boxing-esque, where you take this guy, Jack Della Maddalena, he's in front of a home crowd. Let's boost him up against a guy that he can knock out. I mean, Randy Brown's no slouch, and it's definitely a good test for Jack Della Maddalena. But this guy, Jack, he's very hyped up for a very good reason. I'm rolling with Jack Della Maddalena. Very easy pick for me this week. And
Yeah, I hear
I'm
you. Listen,
to do it by TKO.
yeah, no, listen, I hear you. And Jack Della Maddalena has a rare combination. I mean, look at his nose. You could just tell that he takes a beating. His nose looks like a musical note right now. Like, you could tell that this guy takes a beating and he somehow must enjoy it, I guess. But he's also, when he hits people, they go down. It looks like he's got some type of otherworldly power where he's hitting them with knuckles that are maybe not bone, but maybe some sort of aluminum or metal, replace those knuckles. Whatever you want to say about Jack Della Maddalena, when he hits people, they do go down. And there's not a lot of people who are able to recover with him. And I just want to check this real quick. Looking at his 5 on him, the finisher, Danny Roberts, he looked fantastic. Ramazan Ameev looked great. That's a liver punch. You don't see that happen a ton inside of the UFC. And Ramazan Ameev is not a slouch. I mean, he's definitely had his fair share of up and down, but not a terrible opponent. And you have Pete Rodriguez, the counter left, got there on the contender series, beat a guy, Angelusa, who's made a name for himself. And that was only a year ago. I really like Jack Della Maddalena a lot. And as he's gotten older, he's only improving. He's 26 years old, and he's a good size for the weight division. Here's the problem. Randy Brown is 6'3", so he's giving him a 4-inch height advantage, a little bit of the bigger frame, and he's giving another 5-inch reach advantage on his arms. And I wish I could know where to go to find leg reach and the difference between that, because Randy Brown has the legs of a freaking giraffe. I mean, he hits people from across the ring. The problem with that is, so Randy Brown, when he fights, he likes to pop out the jab, and he fights behind his jab, and that's what someone with a long reach should do. But when I were looking at Jack Della Maddalena, and I can't remember for the life of me if he's a southpaw or if he's traditional, but if he is a southpaw, maybe Keith, you could find that out for me real quick while I'm going into this. But if he is a southpaw, you can expect to see Randy Brown kind of pop out that lead leg as the jab. And fight behind it, looking for the right hand. The right hand has dropped down a couple of his opponents in the past. Looking at Francisco Trinaldo, but he was 44 years old when he did that. And he also went to a decision with him, although Trinaldo is a tank in and of himself, even at 44. He had a split decision win over Chaos Williams, where Chaos Williams, I think, was dropped in the first round, did well in the second round. There was something happened, but it was a split decision. It was really close, but there was if you take out the 1 or 2 knockdowns that Chaos Williams had over Randy Brown, which was when Randy Brown came in, sometimes he can find himself, especially throwing combinations, he can find his head a little bit out of position, where a guy with heavy hands like Chaos Williams can get you and drop you. And if that guy is Jack Della Maddalena who finds the target, you're getting dropped, you're getting your eyes shut, and then you're getting 1, 2, or 3 hammer fist rain down on you. That's going to cause irreparable damage, potentially to the future of your career. So I think the combination of chin and punching power and stone hands, just straight up rocks in his gloves, that I can attribute to Jack Della Maddalena, is going to be enough to find the chin 1, 2, or 3 times of Randy Brown over the course of the fight. And like you were saying, Keith, this is a fight that, they want the Australian fans to have something to cheer about. And getting a guy like Jack Della Maddalena to go in there against a guy who is much larger than him and it has, those ostrich-style legs that just don't make sense on a human body. And seeing Jack Della Maddalena go in there and get it by finish, I think is going to hype everyone up. And he's going to become a much more of a household name, maybe in the United States, definitely in Australia. And I just want to look at the breakdown here of Tapology, and it's exactly what you would expect. 760 voters, 86% on Jack Della Maddalena, 83% of those going by TKO. That's what I'm going to do too. Jack Della Maddalena by TKO. Probably, I would say maybe Randy Brown can get out of the first round, but the problem is with Randy Brown, he can lead. He fights behind a jab and he has a good first round. In his second round, he statistically takes off. I look at Francisco Trinaldo and, just looking at his most recent fights, and I have to remind myself what they are. Yeah, the Chaos Williams fight, the Francisco Trinaldo fight specifically, he could sometimes take that second round off and he could maybe find himself caught in there. And he got caught, by Chaos. And I think it was the first and the third round. The second round, Chaos maybe was trying to figure him out a little bit. Chaos was on his back foot. So a little bit odd there. I think Jack Della Maddalena is just going to be able to go forward. He's going to ignore the leg kicks and he's going to land a clean one on Randy Brown after he forces some sort of like scuffle, some sort of exchange, back and forth combination. And I think, Jack is going to be able to capitalize when he hurts Randy Brown, where other opponents maybe haven't been. So Jack Della Maddalena is the pick. You also picked it. That makes this a super lock.
Yes, sir. I like the super lock quite a bit. And I wasn't able to find if he fights out of southpaw. I'm pretty
Maybe
sure.
It's a switch stance then. It's probably a switch stance. That would make the most sense.
But, Jack Della Maddalena has given up a few inches in reach before. He gave up a few inches to Danny Roberts.
Right.
And, he's really good at getting on the outside and landing hooks. So I like that a lot for Jack Della Maddalena in this matchup. All right, next up, we got Jimmy Crute versus Alonzo Menafield, and this one is yeah,
This is a banger.
Yeah, I'm a little bit more conflicted on this one because my
Much more.
confidence in Jimmy Crute isn't really that high at the moment. But it's also not super high in Alonzo Menafield. Both of these guys are just going to stand there and they're going to throw. Like this is going to be a brawl, and it's going to be about who lands that finishing shot first. You know, and I'm going to go with Jimmy Crute because he's got that added, home crowd. But if you're looking for an upset and an underdog, I think that Alonzo Menafield is probably the highest value dog on this card, outside of the main event potentially. But yeah, I'm gonna roll with Jimmy Crute to get it done in front of the home crowd.
Yeah. I think I would say here. Let me give some analysis and let me know if this ends up changing the way you're thinking. So Jimmy Crute, he's got some of his losses. He's got the loss to Anthony Smith via that drop foot, and even with that drop foot, he was able to out grapple Anthony Smith, take him to the ground, and look pretty solid actually.
Yeah,
when on the ground, even with that drop foot. And then remember that happened maybe 3 minutes. 3:30 into the round, and he was able to finish out the round and end up on top over Anthony Smith with drop foot. And then it was stopped after the first round because of the doctor injury. The foot didn't come back. He did get knocked out recently by the new champion Jamal Hill. So Jamal Hill's knocking almost everyone out other than Glover, and I don't even know how Glover was able to stay
it's just Glover
conscious. And then his most recent loss, or his other loss outside of that, is Misha Cirkunov, who got, that's not a great win. That didn't age super well. But again, Jimmy Crute's young. Jimmy Crute's like 26 years old there? He's 26 years old, and that happened 3 years ago. So you have a guy in the UFC starting out. He was undefeated at the time, 23, 24 years old, thinking they're invincible, right? And then turns around. He gets Peruvian necktied by, a guy that he was winning, and he had some pretty solid ground exchanges there. It was a weird, kind of like he caught himself in a weird position, maybe didn't follow through in the scramble and roll as much as he maybe wanted to. But I think that's maybe bred out of Jimmy Crute, and he's going to be improving a lot more at 26 years old as time goes on. And I think he's learning a lot by being in the ring with guys like Jamal Hill, who went on to be a champion, Anthony Smith, who's consistently at the top of that division and has great fight IQ, Modestas Bukauskas, and Michael Oleksiejczuk. Like we talked about him too, and his Kimura submission, getting a Kimura submission over him isn't anything to really scoff at, because Michael Oleksiejczuk went on to do some pretty solid things. You also add in the fact, he's an Australian fighter, so obviously they're going to want to showcase him. My problem is with him getting knocked out, it was a year ago by Jamal Hill, right? So he's taking some good time off. He has recalibrated his skills, and I really do feel confident in Jimmy Crute, and I would take him to win, but I may also just I would hedge that a little bit with Alonzo Menafield by decision, because again, Jimmy Crute, 26 years old, not immune to making mistakes. And we've seen Alonzo Menafield get so much more accurate lately. He's 35 years old, so he knows he's got to really turn it on now. He's going to be 6 foot tall, so a little bit of the smaller frame, but he's going to be much stockier, as we've seen with Alonzo Menafield. And, he's going to have that little bit of that reach advantage. Coming out of Fortis MMA, that's a little untouchable right now, so I'm not exactly sure where he's training with for this camp. Or wait, no, Fortis MMA is not. Is that?
No, they are.
No, that's Saif Saud. Sorry. I'm getting my gyms mixed up. Brandon Moreno is the problem for that, because Brandon Moreno was coming from James Krause and went to Fortis MMA. Sorry, I don't mean to say that about you, Saif Saud. Saif Saud has, I talked about it a couple weeks ago. He is the reigning UFC coach and gym of the year. And you can see, what his impact has had on Alonzo Menafield, coming out and getting that win over Askar Mazharov, getting the knockout win over Misha Cirkunov. He did lose to William Knight. I think that was maybe before he was with Fortis MMA, maybe just as he was starting with them. And he went to a decision with Ed Herman, submitted Fabio Charant. So you can kind of see, like, going to a decision with Ed Herman, turning around and then knocking out Askar Mazharov, which his history, his reputation, and his record is still very questionable. But, getting the knockout of Misha Cirkunov, not terrible. What was that?
So that's not even his real name.
Yeah, I heard that too, right? In his notable neck tattoo, I just find out it's like a stick-on or something.
Yeah.
The guy's totally a fraud. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, How much has Alonzo Menifield really improved? I want to give Sayf Saeed all the credit because he has looked really good, but that level of competition of Oscar Mazaharov and Misha Serkinov, who I think is on a 3 or 4 fight skid, or I think he's like 1-3 over his last 4, 1-4 over his last 5, something like that. I'm going to lean with Jimmy Crute. Not to say Jimmy Crute can't make a mistake and Menifield catch him with the power. He's called Atomic Menifield for a reason. So I would take maybe Menifield sprinkle a little bit on there to get a finish. But then again, that's probably not going to net you that many odds because if you're betting on Menifield, you're probably betting on him to get it via TKO. So I would do Jimmy Crute to win, and maybe Menifield in like the first or the second. Maybe it's like a knockout by under 1.5. Because again, as the fight goes on, I would expect Jimmy Crute to have much better endurance than the 35-year-old who cuts a lot of weight and has to carry all that muscle around in Alonzo Menifield.
Yeah, you would think so. And also Jimmy Crute's back is a little bit against the wall, right? Like you go down 3 fights in a row in the UFC, obviously it's a great competition, but that doesn't really look so favorable in the eyes of the matchmakers, and
Well, yeah, and Alonzo Menifield, it doesn't he has a solid name for himself, but a knockout from him and then being knocked out by Jamal Hill carries a lot of a different weight. You can let the other one go because he's a champion now. Menifield at 35, going on 36, like trying to make it happen in more of the twilight of his career here, the ending part. That's just going to be weighted differently. And yeah, it's definitely going to hurt for Jimmy Crute. But again, he's 26 years old. He's got a lot of in front of him, a lot of career in front of him. He's had a lot of success up until this point. Taking the year off could be really good for him. Hopefully he doesn't exhibit too much ring rust or anything. But I would feel pretty confident about Jimmy Crute when you add in the fact that, he's the homer. It's an Australian crowd. And, you got Alonzo Menifield who's flying over to Australia. I don't know exactly when he did, but it's not crazy to think that that's going to have some impact on that massive weight cut he has to do. And on his overall just kind of inner clock and adjusting to, Australia.
Yeah, it's a crazy time difference. Speaking of ring rust or potential ring rust, next up we've got Justin Tafa versus Parker Porter. And Justin Tafa hasn't fought since 2018. And then you have Parker Porter who I'm a notorious Parker Porter hater. I can't get past not liking this guy. But I have to admit he is 3-2 over his last 5. He's pretty active at the moment. In terms of the lines, these are the closest lines that we have on this card. Parker Porter's been in there over his last 5 with Jalton Almeida, lost 1 over Alan Baudot, Chase Sherman, Josh Parisian, and then lost to Chris Daukaus, who, at the time, Chris Daukaus looked like he was going to be one of the next big things in this heavyweight division. I'm kind of leaning towards Parker Porter simply because of the activity and the fact that we haven't seen Justin Tafa in so long. And then the lines being this close, like Parker Porter lines at plus 120, those are when he's fighting guys like Chase Sherman. So what does Vegas think about Justin Tafa with all the time off? I also wouldn't be surprised if this fight got slated a little bit earlier and was moved to the prelims and they pushed up Tyson Pedro. But I'm all in on Parker Porter. Let's see, Justin Tafa 1 year ago. I thought it said 2018, but maybe 2021. I don't know where I got 2018 one. Whatever. Anyways, Parker Porter. I'm leaning towards Parker Porter. I got to take one underdog, one upset, and what I think is going to be a little bit of a lackluster heavyweight fight. I think that Parker Porter has the ability to get it done in those types of situations. So I'm rolling with Parker Porter here.
Yeah, listen, Jurgen De Castro knocking out a Polynesian guy is definitely something that has to be analyzed further. But that being said, I mean, listen, he's got the win over Juan Adams, who I don't think is in the UFC anymore, and that's just around 3 years ago. The loss to Carlos Felipe, split decision. I don't like that for longevity. I don't like that for a skills assessment perspective. And then also taking a loss to Jared Vandera by unanimous decision, also not a great look. Getting the win over Harry Hansucker is, what you should do against Harry Hansucker. But, you're looking at Parker Porter. He's got a year off. He's minus 140. He's got the Australian behind him. And I feel like there's usually one of those homer guys who ends up not getting it done. And I think this would be the fight where it would happen because, you got 2 heavyweights who are pretty unpredictable, both pretty big guys, relatively about the same size, but the more and more that we've seen of Parker Porter, we've seen more and more bulk on him. And you can even see in his picture, he's just started to look a little bit more stocky. And Justin Tafa, I'm not seeing that as much. Not that the body types and body styles is everything, but I think it definitely is somewhat of an indicative factor. And you know, I like the activity from Parker Porter. I like the potential. I just want to make sure I'm not speaking at a turn here, but against Alan Badeau, Chase Sherman, Josh Parisian, some guys who don't necessarily hate taking it to the ground, having some semblance of an ability there. Obviously, at heavyweight, that is like the caliber of what I would consider a strong ground game is significantly dialed back. But those are guys like like I said, Chase Sherman doesn't necessarily mind taking it to the ground. And he's had some success there, a little bit less on the side of Josh Parisian, but 13-3, he has had success on the ground and taking guys there. I just think Parker Porter, if he's able to get this to the ground, I mean, obviously against Jailton Almeida, but Jailton Almeida looks like a world beater at light heavyweight and heavyweight. That guy is a monster. That being said, I like Parker Porter. I like the experience. I don't hate it for an upset here. Plus 120 is pretty even. A lot of people on Tapology, and I'll show the people at home, a lot of people on Tapology are thinking Justin Tafa is going to take this one. 71% think he's going to win. 83% by KO, TKO. Certainly possible, but we haven't, Jailton Almeida, he likes to get on you and choke you out, but we haven't seen a lot of necessarily chin issues from Parker Porter other than that Chris Daukaus fight. So yeah, I wouldn't mind tailing you on the Parker Porter fight, but if I'm really having my, if let's just put it this way, if money's tight right now, this isn't the fight I'm betting.
Oh, no shot, because this could go either way. This is a toss-up of a fight. But I think Parker Porter in these heavyweight matchups where it's a little bit of a toss-up, it's not going to be like a barn burner of a fight. I like Parker Porter in those situations.
And I like the activity too. Justin Tafa's got to knock him out, which is totally possible. But Parker Porter, I think, just may have a little bit of ability. He's got a little bit less ring rust, going on. He's been more active. He's got that IQ. Justin Tafa's 29 years old, but he hasn't looked great inside of the UFC. So, really hard. Maybe the moment might get to him. I think this is probably, if it stays where it is, probably the highest up on a card that he's been, at least that I can remember.
Right.
Don't quote my memory either. But that being said, I think I would have to lean Parker Porter as the upset pick with you. But yeah, I would stay away from this one with my wallet.
Yeah, definitely. I think, there's got to be one upset that doesn't go for Australia on this main card. And it's going to be either Jimmy Crute goes down or Justin Tafa goes down. And I'm way more willing to bet that Parker Porter is the one that, throws a little rain on the parade. All right. So now we have the co-main event, and this is for the interim featherweight championships. It's interesting that they've done this because say Volk does lose in the main event, he's going to be fighting this guy next. And then you still have like that, matchmaking going forward. Where Volk still has a division to return to with a very clear-cut fighter that he's going up against. If it goes the other way, then things get a whole lot more interesting. But I'm rolling with Yair Rodriguez in this one. He's so dynamic as a striker. We haven't really his last fight kind of ended weird. He technically got a victory over Brian Ortega, but that one ended with Brian Ortega's shoulder popping out. And so that was a doctor stoppage in the first round. It really wasn't a satisfying fight. Great fight. Yair Rodriguez had back in 2021, at the end of 2021, against Max Holloway. Great fight. Went to decision. To be able to stand in there with Max Holloway and just take everything that he's given you, give some more back. That's really a testament to how good Yair Rodriguez's stand-up game is. And then, a whole slew of decent victories. Jeremy Stevens, little heathen Stevens, who's doing the weirdest stuff over there in the PFL right now. And then you have Chang Sung Jung, the Korean zombie, a victory over him. Other than that, I mean, he went on a long win streak for a while there and fought some great competition. BJ Penn, an aging BJ Penn. But I really like Yair Rodriguez this week. Josh Emmett, I think, he got that win over Calvin Kattar, and it was a good win for him. He fought his game. But I think, Yair Rodriguez, the fight IQ is a little bit too high when it comes to the striking for a guy like Josh Emmett, where he's going to see, a lot of the things that Josh Emmett's trying to give to him, and he's going to be able to counter very well, stay on the outside where Josh Emmett wants to be. So, I think with all that and the use of the legs is crazy from Yair Rodriguez. So I'm rolling Yair in this fight. I haven't even looked at how Tapology is voting this one, but at minus 165, 70% coming in for Yair Rodriguez. So I think at minus 165, high value for Yair Rodriguez. I think that they could have made him minus 225, and I still would have bet him this week. So I'm rolling with Yair Rodriguez. What do you got here?
This is an interesting one. Yair Rodriguez is a guy, like you said, 3 years ago, he had two back-to-back fights with Jeremy Little Heathen Stevens, one ending in a doctor stoppage due to eye injury, and then came back and got the unanimous decision win over him. Took the brutal loss to what was it, Max Holloway. Came back, got the win over Brian Ortega. Listen, Yair Rodriguez is really interesting. He's got a really dynamic jiu-jitsu game. He throws up triangles and he's really aggressive on the ground looking for that submission, but he's not the guy who's going to try and take you down and lay on you and look for the submission that way. Josh Emmett has really good wrestling. He doesn't showcase it. He's a wrestler who fell in love with the hands, and that's where he finds himself right now. Josh Emmett also has a really good right hand that put away Michael Johnson a couple years ago. Been more of a decision fighter lately, but he's been at the top of the heap in terms of the quality of competition he's had. I mean, you go back and you look at it, Calvin Kattar split decision. I think that one was probably a loss, but either way, just going back and forth with a guy like Calvin Kattar, it says a lot about where Josh Emmett is at this point in his career. He's definitely got to step on the gas at 37 years old. This is probably the last and only chance he will have at accomplishing a belt. So he's definitely got that going for him. He had a really, really good showing against Dan Ige. Dan Ige is a guy who, of course, naturally always just kind of swells up, but, looked especially good there. Shane Burgos getting the decision unanimous over him. That's a really, really good win. And, another knockout over Mirsad Bektic. And you could just see over the years, he's, taking a little bit of break here, but, kind of almost break proof or rust proof when you look at Josh Emmett. And then you have, Yair Rodriguez, who's dynamic. Now, here's the thing that could throw a wrench in all of this. I saw on Twitter maybe last week that Josh Emmett is dealing with a hip injury. So that would potentially keep me from betting this. But at the end of the day, we've seen Josh Emmett go against guys with really dynamic striking, if it's just boxing or even, leg kicks, and be able to move forward and start landing his jab, start landing his right hand, start piecing them up using the boxing. And if it does end up on the ground, I like Josh Emmett being, a little bit of the shorter, stocky wrestler style build to be able to defend off a lot of the stuff from Yair Rodriguez. I think if anything, Josh Emmett is probably going to end up on top. If he is on bottom, I don't see that lasting for too long. I think you're going to maybe see Yair Rodriguez. Jesus, it's a tongue twister this morning. Yair Rodriguez kind of, try to throw some things up and maybe not quite get them. And Josh Emmett may be in some trouble here and there. But I think by and large on the feet, you said it exactly right. Yair Rodriguez is going to be on the outside, trying to use those leg kicks, trying to land, to the body, to the leg, try to immobilize Josh Emmett, stop him from going forward. But I think Josh Emmett is going to be good enough at checking that leg kick, especially because he keeps his front leg out a little bit wide with that wrestler base. He's going to keep that out a little bit, be able to easily check, and then just boom, boom, blast in, hit a 1-2. Blast, hit him with the jab, hit him with a jab to the body, come upstairs. And I think over time, that's going to start to land more and more for Josh Emmett, especially as the fight goes on. We've seen Yair Rodriguez, be able to sit in there and deal with wars. But as the fight goes on, he starts to leave a little bit more openings. And I think Josh Emmett has some really solid boxing skills at this point in his career. So I'm actually going to side with Josh Emmett and go against the good folks at Tapology in this one.
It's a fair pick. I'm not going to touch this one personally because it could go either way. I'm just a little bit more confident in Yair Rodriguez. But in terms of activity and everything, and just looking like he's improving constantly, especially at 37, Josh Emmett definitely has that in his favor. So, yeah, I like your pick. But, we have to diverge a little bit, right? So,
absolutely.
Yair Rodriguez there. Main event time.
Before we get into the main event, just want to ask everyone more time. Comment, subscribe. Let us know what your thoughts are on the show, what picks you're going to be taking, if you're going to be tailing us, if you're going against us, let us know. Is there a bet on the card that maybe we missed and we didn't have it? Should we not label this best bets if we're not giving out the best bets? Throw us a like. We really appreciate it. Let us know if there's any conversation that you want us to talk on or anything going on that we haven't talked about. And, give us a subscribe. We really appreciate it. All the love. With that said, main event time.
Yeah. All right. I'm nervous about this one. Typically, when Volk is fighting, I wear my Volk shirt. I'm at my parents' house right now, a couple states away. So I didn't pack my Volk shirt, which It's
Shameful.
yeah, I don't know if that was like the good luck charm or anything, but Volk, the body of work, um, it stands alone. It wasn't me wearing a T-shirt that made him good. So either way, I'm
I
going
don't
to
know
be
about
there
that.
Fight night, but I'm nervous for this one because I am a huge Alexander the Great Volkanovski fan. I'm a little bit stressed here because I think Islam is he's probably going to win. Um, his striking is coming all together. He showed that off against Charles Oliveira. He's got the wrestling, obviously. I almost don't want to say it. I think Islam. I'm no. I'm going to go with Volk here. I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to go with Volk at plus 300. That's a bet that I could feel really good about. The line is
Okay.
up there. If he upsets Islam, he becomes the greatest of all time. It's cemented at that point. There's no argument whatsoever. Argue with the casuals on Twitter all you want about how Habib is better. But if Volk wins this, he's cemented as the greatest of all time. And that's the bet that I'm going to take. I'm not going to take the bet based on purely is Islam's skill set better because it potentially is. I think Alex is a smarter fighter. I think he's the more well rounded fighter. There's a chance he can defend the takedowns. We know that he can defend really good submissions on the ground off of his back, especially. So I like that going for him. He's not as strong in the striking, he's not as powerful, but when it comes to striking, getting in, getting out, landing really good shots, I like that in Volk's favor. Um, and I'm betting on him going down in history as the greatest of all time. That's what this plus 300 bet is for me this week. It's not necessarily that I think that he could beat Islam Makhachev, but it's that he could be the greatest of all time if he does it. So I'm willing to take that plus 300 and, bet on my boy. I'm rolling with Volk this week. What do you got, Tom?
Yeah, my heart says Volk. My mind says Islam. I'm going to go with my mind with Islam. I think that's a smarter bet, smarter pick. He's going to be the bigger guy, and everyone talks about that Dagestani grip once they get on him. It's not like something you could train for. It's not like something you could prepare for. And again, Volk does have a grappling background. I think he was a world champion wrestler in Australia, or not maybe an Australian champion, maybe not world. Obviously he's got the really thick base from his time as a 215-pound rugby player. He's gotten really, really good and slick and quick with his stand up. I think, training with Craig Jones and everything he's been doing and looking at some of his practice, it looks really, really, really good. I think that, nobody really has been in there with Islam, especially not me. But listening to what everybody talks about and talking about that grip and the strength and the power and that you feel like you're getting mauled by somebody who's, a weight class or two above you. And you have Volk who's moving up to that weight class, maybe has the best body type to do it, just considering that it's used to extra weight. He says normally, a week before the fight, he's hovering around 160-ish, so he can cut down to 45. Now he's hovering around 170, so he can cut down to 55. So everything seems to be going to plan. He is insanely inspirational. He is humble and confident, not cocky. You could go anywhere, and I think he's still a super great source of motivation for anybody. And I love him saying like, hey, listen, like we're all giving him the praise now, and that's well, and that's fine. And I don't mind being in the underdog role, but at the same time, like keep that same mentality. Don't forget that. Like when I beat him, don't start saying, well, he did get knocked out here or this and that. Keep that same energy when I go in there and I win. And I love seeing that from Volk. I would love nothing more than Volk to win this one. It would be fantastic. I'm looking forward to it. I hope it happens, but I can't put my money on it. And like you said, Keith, you're basically betting that plus 300 is basically betting on Volkanovski being the greatest of all time and upsetting someone, statistically going against him with grappling that no one has been able to do up until this point. Even his brother had that, back and forth fight with Gleison Tibau, and Islam Makhachev. He got knocked out once from a straight right hand. I think it was, or maybe even a left hand. He got knocked out once, but I think he's vastly improved since then. He's a whole different fighter. And I'm going to have to pick Islam Makhachev. I think he's going to get it done. I hope I'm wrong. And this is probably the bet that I've made, obviously not with my wallet, but with my mouth. This is the bet I've made that I've probably hoped I was wrong on most, up until this point.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, there are things to consider, right? Like I saw a clip of Islam Makhachev almost getting choked out by Chris Wade via guillotine. Almost only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. But there are things to consider like that too, where Volk is going to be looking for the takedown. He's going to be expecting it.
And that's when people
So
find themselves knocked out. That's the problem.
Yeah,
Is
that's
when
true.
you're expecting
That's
it, you're
true.
looking for it too much. They mix it up on you, and that was why Khabib's hand started to come on later in his career, is because people were afraid of the takedown, and then boom, that gets him in a precarious situation. And I'm afraid that Volk has maybe been relying and preparing a little bit too heavily to defend the takedown, as he should. Like, I don't know what the right answer is. You have to prepare to defend that takedown. I think you really just need to have an elite level grappling base. And then prepare your takedowns and prepare your striking as probably the best skill set to try and beat a Dagestani like Islam Makhachev.
Yeah. Well, I'm nervous. All week, I'm going to be nervous. This is like, I'm a huge Giants fan. This is as if the Giants were in the Super Bowl for me, because this is cementing somebody's legacy this weekend. And
Sure.
I really hope it's Alexander Volkanovski. All right, so it is now 12:28. Let's peel out of here real quick and kick off our pick rundown. All right,
you first, sir.
All right, for prelim locks, I'm going with Tyson Pedro over Modestas Bukauskas. I'm going to tail you with Jack Jenkins over Don Shainis. I'm going with Jamie Malaki over Francisco Prado. For the main card, going with Jack Della Maddalena over Randy Brown. Jimmy Crute over Alonzo Menafield. With that one, still not certain on it. May not throw any money there. And I'm going with Parker Porter over Justin Tafa. Again, a little bit uncertain, but I do like Parker Porter in this fight. I'm going with Yair Rodriguez over Josh Emmett. And I'm going with my boy, Alexander the Great Volkanovski over Islam Makhachev. What do you got, Tom?
Yeah, that's hurting. I wish I could pick Volk, and I'm gonna regret not picking him if he wins. I'm really gonna regret it. I may even regret not picking him even if he loses, honestly. For my prelim totals, I am going with Luma Luca-Bonmi over Elise Reed. Sticking with you, I like Jamie Malaki over Francisco Prado, and I like Tyson Pedro over Modestas Bukauskas. I also like Jack Jenkins over Don Shainis. Moving on to the main card, I'm going Jimmy Crute over Alonzo Menafield, but maybe trickling a little something on the fact that Jimmy Crute might get knocked out by laser Alonzo Menafield or atomic Alonzo Menafield. I am going to say Parker Porter over Justin Tafa, Jake Della Maddalena over Randy Brown, Josh Emmett over Yair Rodriguez, and Islam Makhachev over Alexander Volkanovski, as much as it pains me.
All right. Yeah, this is a tough one. Well, one more time, just want to ask the kind of people at home, like, comment, subscribe, follow us on our socials @_pickandwinner on Instagram and Twitter, as well as our personal socials on @pickandkeith on Twitter, and Tom is @pickandfights Tom. Check out pickandwinners.org. We were talking about it before. If you missed it, Tyler's back with his lacrosse picks. He's very early on the lacrosse stuff. It's just starting to go out there with the lines and everything for the PLL. So definitely check that out. I'm tailing his picks weekly. It's becoming a habit again, like it was last season. But make sure you bet responsibly this weekend. Tom, thank you for being here again. Really appreciate having you back. Almost forgot about that. You can listen to us on Spotify. But it was really nice having you back. Not as many technical difficulties for me this week. And good luck with everything. Really happy that you got your move, taken care of, and just keep pushing forward, bud. Keep doing the thing.
Thanks, pal. And for everyone at home, maybe we'll be in the same place next week or the week after. We got some stuff in the works, so really excited about the future. Everyone enjoy the fights, and we'll see you next time.